Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome to the regular scheduled school committee meeting of Monday, March 25th, 2019. This is your reminder that this meeting is being electronically recorded. We'll start tonight again with our spotlight event on the agenda, and for that I'll turn it over to Superintendent Sawyer for introductions.
Thank you, Chairman. We have quite a group of schools and people to present to us tonight about MCIEA, an important topic in the district. And at this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Regan, who will introduce the presenters.
Sure. So tonight we have folks from the Attleboro Community Academy, Studley Elementary School, and Brennan. So if I could call up Mr. Palma and Dr. Souza. Get us started.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right,
Oh,
let's do it.
sold. We are very lucky that together we've been working with MCIEA this year, starting this year as a group. Our three buildings kind of came together to move forward with the MCIEA process and performance assessment and helping our teachers learn about performance assessment, but also our students experience it. We've been it's caused a lot of great connections between, I think, all our three buildings, our three spaces, and this is what we'd like to present tonight. We're really going to hand it over more to the teaching crew than we are to
Right.
us, but we have a few words.
Yeah, right. So before I introduce the team to start us off, I do want to say that, I've seen since MCIEA has been working diligently with our schools, the planning, the thoughtfulness, the reflection that's going on between teachers. We have a student here, Antonio, today. Wait till he gets the spotlight. He's really going to showcase what we're really trying to accomplish here in Attleboro. And it's really just kind of rethinking the way we assess not only our students, but assess our schools. So at this particular point, I'd like to introduce from Brennan, Lynn Gorman, Christina McGordy, and of course, Antonio Araujo. Come on up. And I think this clicker
Okay.
will guide us through.
Red button. Like that.
Try that. There it is.
Hi, I'm Lynn Gorman, grade 6, ELA and Social Studies, and I was asked back in the summer to be part of MCIEA, and I got the opportunity to go and become part of this really incredible process. So what is it? It is a performance-based assessment. A performance-based assessment is an alternative way to assess students' mastery of a certain skill or topic using means other than paper-based testing or computer-based testing in a standardized format. It's bringing education to an active learning. Okay, so why are we shifting towards performance assessments? One, it's all-inclusive. Performance-based assessments will close the achievement gaps by race, income, language, learning styles, ability, while broadening the curriculum. Technological, with a more global and technological world, students need to focus more on critical thinking and deeper learning. And real-world applications, students apply what they've learned to real-life experiences in an authentic way. It's not just meant now for an assignment to be put in a folder or brought, home and put on the fridge. Now it's something that we celebrate, that we share, that we kind of create and put out there to an audience. And it also encourages critical thinking. This extends beyond rote memorization and provides an opportunity for students to apply these skills. So this brings us to a new mindset with our students. So we've gone from silence and isolation, sitting in desks, here's the book, teachers talking, to a situation where students are now communicating, and it's a collaborative learning environment. Instead of the have tos, like you have to do this, they now get to do it, and they get a choice in it. They have a voice and a choice. It is aligned to units and chapters still, but now it's aligned with authentic learning targets. How does this apply to the real world? How can we take this forward and apply it to other things? We actually have been doing some really great lessons with the 3-act math, where we actually did this haircut thing. It was really cool, and the kids kept growing the project bigger than what it started as, and it continued to grow and grow. You were part of that.
Yeah.
So scoring used to be like secret and external. Now it's transparent. It's rubrics and required self-assessment. The students now have the opportunity to kind of gauge what it is they're creating based on what it is they're expected to do. And it's taken that disconnected and purposeless feeling and given the kids engagement and purpose. They now have a reason for why they're doing what they do. And an interesting thing with also on how it's transparent and requires that authentic learning targets, it does really go with our exit outcomes here in Attleboro. So that brings us to Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina McCordy. So I'm very excited to be on the MCIEA team because we already have this great curriculum, but now with this program, this really helps us to focus on the engagement part of Attleboro and taking that curriculum and really making it come alive. I love what we've seen in the students, and we'll get into social emotional in a minute, but just this is only a fraction of some of the great things we see throughout our schools: performing plays, video recordings, poetry books, 3-act math, building and inventing in 3D, podcasts, interactive games, the physics fair, blogs. So well, onto the 3D thing. This is just an example of an animal cell project that 2 students did together collaboratively, and then they also made a PowerPoint to go with it. So you could have had a 4-page, paper-based test, or something that they actually worked collaboratively on, making a PowerPoint and then explaining the function of each organelle. They lit up. One of the kiddos is a kiddo who really struggles in school, and he's not a fan of school in general, but he was so excited about this, and he was so proud of himself, and that was just a great moment to see that. So.
Okay, next slide, sorry.
So what we've seen is a huge improvement in positivity in social emotional needs of our students. So we see increased interaction amongst peers, group collaboration, as I just spoke about, greater sense of accomplishment and pride. We see their confidence levels increasing. They're excited and they're engaged. #engage Attleboro. You go into any class and you just see their smiles and they're excited to learn. They're interested in it. It's not, what does this have to do with me? It's, this is awesome. I can't wait to show mom or dad. Or students who would otherwise not participate become actively involved, as I just discussed. And my favorite part, it empowers all students, from special ed students to AP students. All students can do this type of assessment and really show us how they learn in a way that works for them. But I really want to put the spotlight on my buddy Antonio here to tell us about what you've done.
Let me kind of do a little introduction here. So Antonio's in my ELA and social studies class, and when I knew I was coming here to speak to you tonight, I started thinking about who this really impacted, and looking at my students and what students really have embraced the idea of project-based assessments. And Antonio had struggled with taking paper-based tests for a while, and I could feel his frustration. And it kept building and building, and I'm going to let him tell you the rest of his story.
Hi, you guys. How you doing? It's a pleasure to be here. I don't really test well on actual, like, paper-based tests. We usually get a social studies test where you have multiple answers or multiple questions. Either write true or false or circle which answer is correct. So I usually second guess myself a lot. I either say, okay, I think it's this one, or I either say, okay, I know it's this one because I read it in the book, or I say, oh crap, what am I gonna do now? Because it's not, because I go back into my notes, and it's not in my notes. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm screwed. What am I gonna do now? You know, I don't have the answers. I don't have nothing. So now I'm panicking. I'm not gonna answer any of them, and I'm gonna get a 0. And so my last test, I usually go for an 80 or above, a B or above, and I got a 66, which is a C, and it's still passing, but you know, it took a bite out of my grade. It dropped me down to like a C minus, you know. And when I did it was a writing SEPA, right? And it was on kind of like this, like you could show it out, you could draw it, you can do examples. I actually did better than what I did on my actual test. I actually got a 85 on the actual I could actually show you how, okay, climate zone number 2, crabs, panthers, and lizards, and also the food that lives there, bananas, herbs, sugarcane, and you also have evergreens here that live there. Then you got also animals that live there, panthers, you got crabs, you got lizards. So I could basically show you and actually show you how I actually excel then here than I actually do on a process-based test. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is nerve-wracking. Growing up, all of you guys are all amazing, you know?
You're doing a great job.
I'm just trying to show you guys that I excel better here than actually saying, okay, write true or false here, use your notes, and here you go, good luck, you know?
When given a choice,
Yes.
and given the ability to say, okay, now I want you to go show me how you know this information, that's when he starts to shine. And that's when this all kind of, I want to say clicked for me, but it was kind of that moment where I went, wow, this really is engaging Attleboro.
Yep.
Great.
And then we have the next slide. We're going to trade? Okay.
We did a
Great job.
I'm just going to speak briefly about some of the pieces that we've been able to see on the elementary level, but also more to the what MCIEA kind of has helped us with, but also the community piece. One of the unique pieces that we've been able to do is at Studley in particular is work with the Attleboro, the ACA here in Attleboro. That's been unique for us, where we've been able to bring high school students over to Studley to give us a hand with part of our teaching, actually direct teaching in our one of our third grade classrooms. We've kind of spoken about it before. The ACA I think, presented last year, and we're continuing that and we're growing that, but we're learning as we go. But this kind of opportunity has allowed them to be able to show exactly what they're learning in class in a real life situation, helping our students, and it's a kind of it's a benefit to both sides. The partnership for us has been wonderful. It's been connecting students. It's almost fostering a mentoring almost situation where our kids kind of get connected and attached to some of the older kids too, which is nice. But it also allows our high school students to see that they can impact. They have a bigger impact than just, you know, classroom-based work, that they're really helping kids. As educators, we've learned that we need to continue to develop that. We're working on that. We want to make that stronger. The student teaching students is very powerful. You can't ask for better than that, really, in some ways. They really are wonderful talking with our kids. And our younger students see our older ones as mentors, which is something we wanted to do within the school as well, but this allowed us a little different way of doing it. And being a mentor is very motivating. You know, we get to see the students that were involved were present. They were sad if they missed their day. You know, both the high school and third graders, it was motivating to be there on those specific days. That's been a big deal for us. What MCIEA has done for us is really helped us clarify what performance assessment is, help our teachers learn as we went along with our coach that comes from MCIEA, Soraya Ramos. She's been fantastic, and I believe I speak for all of us if I say that. She has come to all 3 of our buildings. She coaches all 3 of us. She helps coordinate amongst the buildings. She makes sure that we're all getting the same message. And then she's even come to support us during PD, which is wonderful, because you have an expert there. You know, we still have questions. We are still learning. We're still developing it. We want to make sure it's authentic. She helps us with that. She helps guide us with that. She keeps us organized. You know, she keeps us focused, because with everything else going on, sometimes things, you know, we don't want anything to slide. She helps us stay on the path and go moving in the right direction, which we appreciate. Her coming to our PD was, I think, remarkable. You know, because we really had somebody right there who lives it, breathes it, and answers the questions, and could really speak for anything we weren't sure of. Moving forward, we were able to have Morgan join us. Morgan's from the ACA. She's one of their teachers, and Morgan's Walsh is going to share her stories when she started here in Attleboro.
Yes, so I am going to share a little bit both about my journey, and my students' journey with the MCIEA project and process as a whole. So I was hired this past August. This is my 2nd year teaching. I was hired through the Attleboro Community Academy as an English hybrid teacher. And only a few days later, I found myself in the MCIEA Summer Institute, and I was blown away by the years and years of experience of my peers that I found myself in. I was completely overwhelmed with the people that I was surrounded with and just all of the experiences that they shared together. And I felt not only the pressure to meet the expectation of both Attleboro, my principal, and my new coworker, but also the expectations of MCIEA and what that set. Now, I felt this state of fear and almost like discouragement for a decent part of this process. I'm not going to lie. It took me a really long time to actually be confident in the work that I was doing. And I'm going to get into a little bit of that story in a second. But it was a process from about August to November is how long it took me to actually think of my project and the idea. And then it took me until about February to actually have the gall to present that to my coworkers and my peers and eventually my students. Essentially, it took me until my very wise principal asked me the question, what do you really want to teach your students? A very simple question. And I actually had to think about it because I wanted to know, what do I want my students to learn from this process? And a common theme of all the texts that we read in English class was identity and growth, and how do you evolve and change when given a conflict or adversity. And something that I realized from a lot of my students, whether it is their demographic or their past experiences, is that identity is something that they don't see as dynamic. It's concrete, it's stagnant, and especially in terms of education. They think that their identity within the classroom has been given to them either by themselves, their parents, their past teachers, whoever it may be. And I wanted them to learn that that is not true whatsoever. And so I kind of want to go into the student journey a little bit with that. So when I was asked what do I want my students to learn, I came up with this idea of crafting a character. I want them to learn about identity, but for a lot of my students, their identity and their experiences are extremely personal to them, and some of them just aren't ready to tell their story. And so I wanted them to be able to explore identity and see how you can work with it rather than against it through the realm of a completely fictional character that they make up. And so they were able to explore and analyze identity without having to compromise their own, which I understand is a huge sacrifice that one has to make. So the goal of this project was, one, for them to create a unique, dynamic character with an original identity who experiences a conflict and growth. Essentially exactly what I wanted my students to do for me, but in the form of a fictional character. The purpose of this was to teach them that conflict is what teaches you to grow. Conflict is not something that defines who you are, yet it just becomes a part of your definition. I really wanted my students to speak for themselves, and so I included some quotes, and I want you to be able to kind of like take a look at them. Feel free to kind of flip through them. A lot of my students came to me with a whole different level of, abilities and past knowledges. And so it became clear to me that this project couldn't be something that looked the same for every single person. And so basically proof of this character's existence was given to me in a series of anywhere from 5 to 7 entries based on the students' abilities. And these entries could range from diaries to podcasts if they wanted to short videos, anything they wanted to really create this character's existence, they could give it to me in that way. And the range of responses I got, I think, speak for themselves. On the very last day of class, I had them do a required reflection as a part of this assignment. And what my students didn't know is that this is where the real assessment came for me as their teacher. Because while this project, of course, is made to assess their skills and their knowledge as a student of English, it was also to assess and see if they were able to grow and see themselves as better students than they did in August, and see that their identity can change and grow with them if they're able to maybe explore them in different ways. I want to share one story about a student named Alex. He did give me permission to say his name. He's not here right now. He gave me permission to say his middle and last name too, but I'll just say his first name. Alex is a student who is about 3 feet taller than I am. He's huge. And he had a difficult time with English. I would say that he was middle of the pack. He could do his work, he could comprehend, but writing was always a struggle for him. And throughout this entire process, I was a little worried for Alex because it's typically writing intensive. And you have to think a lot on your own. And I found that Alex struggled with a little bit more of the creative aspects of it. And I tried to help him as much throughout this process, but also let him learn for his own, or on his own. And I was able to have an awesome conversation with Alex on the very last day of class, and I asked him if he liked the project. A simple question. And he goes, at first, no, I didn't. I thought it was really hard. But then, to make it easier on myself, I kind of just started thinking about what I want out of life, and what conflicts I face, and what do I want to do. And eventually, this project turned into me realizing what I want to do with the rest of my life, and what I need to do to get there. And despite the grades, and despite maybe the spelling errors, I think that was the best result I could have gotten from any assignment I could give a student of mine. And I just want to kind of end my journey, both the students and mine, with a thank you to everyone in this room today. Because without your support in helping myself and all the other teachers attend MCIEA, I would not have had the courage to be here, to create a project all on my own, to present that to my students, to my principal, to my peers, and also experience the same type of growth that my students did. So thank you.
Very good.
That was agreeable.
I had to think of something, yeah.
That kind of just sums up what we wanted to present and share with you all. We hope that you kind of we're enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
We know we have a little ways to go, but we are enjoying it, and we get to hear stories like this, and we get to hear stories like Antonio. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
Can I just have one comment that a student from the high school who transferred over to the ACA, who did not share anything about his daily life when he was at the high school, is sharing the most about going over to Studley and his experiences there with his family and how much he loves it.
Mr. Quinn?
I think the timing of this presentation was opportune, particularly given the window that we're going to be heading into, and just the stark contrast that the projects that were discussed paint today compared to some of the projects and endeavors our students will be engaging in over the next couple of weeks. I also want to commend Antonio. In the 4 years I've been in this seat, I don't know, Ms. Walsh, you were fantastic. So this is not a slight in any way. I've never been so compelled by a speaker who was so genuine and captured what I think we want to be the mission of Engage, Challenge, and Inspire. And I'm not saying this with hyperbole. I know the folks at MCIEA, when they think about what does this look like and what is it, they think of somebody like you, but they couldn't have thought of somebody who could deliver in such a way. And you could be the poster person for it. And if they don't take you on the road, I think it'd be a limitation. So just wonderful job. Thank you to you and the educators for providing this opportunity. It's wonderful. And, for whoever's watching at home, there's also a tradition in this state where MCIEA somehow manages to get cut out of the governor's budget. And it's an annual occurrence. And thankfully, Representative Hawkins, and I think his first day in office, filed like an emergency amendment to get it back in. So I think we need to cover this because it can't go away. It's dependent on funding. It's a small bit of funding, but we're seeing the tangible impact in Attleboro, and it's great to have these many examples that you provided today. So thank you very much, and just fantastic job to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All right, next we will turn it over to Mr. Lancaster with our Student Advisory Council update.
Hi, I'm going to remain seated so I can stay as close to the microphone as possible here. But just a quick update on things that are going around. There's some stuff going on at the elementary schools. There's a registration day for kindergartners, which is always good, and there's a spring picture day, which I don't recall having when I was at Willett, but it sounds great, and it's probably a great event. We almost had a trivia night. I did one of those at Willett one time, and it was awesome. I think my dad came, and or it was something of the sort, and it was just it was just in the cafeteria, and it's just one of those events that you just go and you're with your friends, and it really kind of just gets you guys together and thinking about things that I guess will make you smarter in the end, which is the goal of school. Where are we? Almost had the PTO craft night fun right here. The National Junior Honor Society induction ceremony. I think that was enacted when I was in Brennan. I think it was when I was in 7th grade, which was awesome because it's great to be recognized for the things that you're doing at a young age, but also it was a great connection for us to start thinking about things that we were going to do in high school. I was in the National Junior Honor Society. The first year was started, and I'm also in the National Honor Society now, which is a logical procession. But it's just, I remember doing that, and I think there was a speaker at one point from the high school that went to speak to us, and it was just, it's, oh my God, there's a high schooler here that's going to come talk to us about grades and stuff. It was a little intimidating, but I just remember it being strangely, empowering, just because it's something that connects you directly with kids that are older and smarter and seemingly like these immortal gods that are up at the high school all the time. And it really was right when I got to the high school. I was like, oh, I know there's this thing that's going on. I can think about the National Honor Society. There's positions on it that you can run for and everything. And it's just one step towards making the gap between middle school and high school a little smoother than it needs to be. And then another picture there for Coelho. At the high school, we just started the first few classes today of trimester 3, so everyone's classes are shifted around, which is awesome. Seniors are almost out the door, and it's everyone's favorite trimester, just because it's where you get your fun classes, the classes that you really want to have. For example, I have astronomy, which is like awesome. I started today, great class, and I can't wait to see what it involves. And then there's also this week is ELA testing, which is kind of always a rocky session for any kids that are dealing with their classes. It's it's tomorrow. I have a 3.5 hour AP Literature class, and those, for some kids, they like those things. They like and I'm going to watch a play by Shakespeare tomorrow, and we're going to talk about it. And I like that kind of thing, but some kids don't, and it's so it's a little shaky always when it's just the schedules are shifted around. But that's kind of what's going on for the first few days of high school. It's tomorrow and Wednesday, if I'm correct, and so the schedule's all whacked up in all sorts of ways. But that's what's going on. The Credit for Life Fair, I'm not sure if you guys all know what that is. It's pretty much the juniors go, and they are, I don't know how to describe it. You are set up as you're 25 years old, and you have to get a job, and you have to paying your taxes and paying bills and buying furniture for your house, and you kind of go around at all these different tables and make decisions about your life, that you're pretending to have, and it teaches you about saving money and things. And I remember just one part about putting money in the bank that has stuck with me the entire time. Just one little lesson that the guy was talking about. But there's a lot of things that you don't realize when you're a junior about what you have to pay for when you're older. Trust me when I say that. So that's really an awesome event. I volunteered at it 2 years ago when I was a sophomore. I just helped set it up, and I really, hands down, it's a really, I don't know, it teaches in a way that you couldn't be taught that in a classroom. You kind of have to almost fail, just like in the MCIEA. It's just as important to run out of money and go bankrupt as it is to be successful in the end in the event, and that's the lesson that is powerful. And the spring musical is awesome always. Everyone loves the spring musical. And also on April 5th, the seniors have their prom, which is early, and we're having it in Rhode Island. Roads on the Patuxent. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. Super stoked. It's gonna be awesome. And the community, there's the district travel meeting, which is always great. And then the last SERSAC meeting for SAC is coming up, where we're gonna go and meet some other SACs. And I guess as a final update for SAC, we have to pick new delegates soon, because yes, Jen and I will be leaving. I don't want anybody to break into tears or anything, but we need to start that process, get some volunteers, and then we'll have the entire population of the school vote on it to see who will be picked. And that's something that we have to kind of put our heads together and think about with Mrs. Pereira, the leader of the student council. So that's what we're doing moving forward.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. No questions. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to our business agenda and start with the report of the superintendent. Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a few items to report on this evening. The first is to update the committee that earlier today I had my monthly meeting with the mayor. We continue to meet monthly to review ongoing issues and to open up communication. And I am happy to report that I think it is paying dividends, that we have this opportunity to sit and discuss items that we have in common, and to improve that communication to ensure that we're working together in the best interest of the students here in Attleboro. We are still both building our budgets for FY20. Mr. Furtado and I will be traveling to City Hall, I believe it is next week, to do a much more in-depth dive into both our proposed budget and where the city stands. So we will certainly have a good idea of where the city has landed by our presentation to the Finance Subcommittee on April 3rd. At this time, we don't have a new number. The mayor is still working, which is to say that they're still building their budget and making sure that they can meet all their needs. And I asked the mayor for, what his message, based on the city's position is. He let me know that all the departments in the city are underfunded, that everyone has to do their best to make do with less than that they need, and that the schools are certainly in that situation, which is not unfamiliar territory to us. And he also let me know that his chief priority is to deliver a budget to the city council that does not require layoffs in any department. So that was his message to me, and I told him that I would convey that to you this evening. And again, we'll have more news on actual numbers after we have a chance to sit down in greater depth on that.
So, Superintendent Sawyer, when you meet
Yes.
with him, when you and Mr. Furtado meet with him next week and go over our budget, I know that you won't have presented it to the school committee yet. Will you be presenting the 3 separate budgets that we asked you to present? Because we had talked about level service, urgent needs, and needs-based.
So he's already in possession of our educational responsibility budget, which is the 10 million plus number. We will be reviewing with him our priorities for FY20, which is above level services. But the exercise that we're planning for is a line by line accounting of the level service budget. That's what the focus of the city will be on, but we will certainly be sharing the priorities as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, couple events I wanted to go over. If you didn't notice in the weekend's paper, Mrs. Zito's obituary was in the paper, and her wake will be this Friday at the Foley Cook Hathaway Funeral Home over on South Main Street. I believe that begins at 4, so obviously this will be an important chance for the district to pay our respects to a really important historic member. And then the other thing I would notify everyone is that on Thursday, April 4th at 5:30, we'll be having our annual Gender and Identity Forum here at Attleboro High School. That's a great event every year, and we certainly invite all to come and participate. In terms of the high school project, I have 2 quick things. One, Mr. Furtado will be bringing a decision that we need to make about the pool to the next finance subcommittee meeting. The project is going to impact the drainage system for the pool, so we're going to have to make a decision about how we handle that, and that will be something that he's raising in that forum. And then the other important piece of information is that we are meeting with the MSBA and DESE to discuss the Chapter 74 spaces in the design on April 3rd. And so that's a big meeting for us in terms of getting the blessings from the educational perspective. We already met with the MSBA about the design as a whole. They're very happy, but we also have to make sure that DESE is comfortable with where we're going with the Chapter 74 spaces. So that'll be happening on the 3rd. And then finally, I just wanted to inform you that Ms. Regan and I went to a conference last week. It was held by the Department of Education at UMass Amherst. It was sort of framed as, mapping the future was the sort of tagline of the conference, a look at, where we're going to be going as a state. And I just, one real important thing I'd like to express as a takeaway from that experience is that Commissioner Riley's message continues to be consistent. We've seen him speak in several different forums, and he stays on message, which I hope is a clear indication of how sincerely he intends to pursue that message. Because, as I'm about to share with you, I think it's one that matches very well with what we're committed to here in Attleboro and where we'd like to see the state go. He expressed that Massachusetts is ready for the next big shift in how we organize education in the state, and that there needs to be a change, that ed reform over the last 25 years has served us very, very well, but it's time for the next thing. He expressed a desire to find a sensible approach to accountability, which is to say to revise the way we're doing it now, not to get rid of it. I don't think that's the message there, but that perhaps there are things that we could be doing better and better ways to assess students and to hold districts accountable. And he expressed that while he thinks there are very talented people at DESE, perhaps DESE as an organization could find a way to be more of an actual support to districts in their work rather than seem punitive in the way that they do accountability. Much of the conference was focused on the challenges of our projected future, looking at, again, the impact on artificial intelligence, robots, all those kinds of things on the economy, and what does education mean in a world where as many as 50% of the jobs that exist today are projected to not exist in the near-term future. The good news is that the commissioner's vision of this is that we must focus the educational system on deeper learning. And by that, he means rigorous, interdisciplinary performance tasks. So, couldn't match up better than with tonight's presentation on MCIEA. I mean, this is exactly where we're trying to go as a district, and it's refreshing to hear the commissioner say that he recognizes that, this is where the state needs to go as well. I think there's a lot of good thinking going on around this. Another important message that he shared at the conference was that if we're going to get there, if we're going to meet the needs that our students face, we need to unleash the creative power of Massachusetts educators, that they have been, hampered by the educational system that we've sort of created for today. And I appreciate that he recognizes that, we can do more in a different system. So that's all very exciting. The only other thing I would mention is that the keynote speaker was again speaking about the impact of technology and the future economy on our educational system. And I would say Ms. Regan and I both enjoyed his remarks, but I was really encouraged that there was a recognition that if this is really going to change, if Massachusetts is really going to be bold and alter the way we organize our educational system, we need colleges and universities to have different sets of requirements for their entrance, because those requirements are based on the 19th century model of education that's still perpetuating many of the problems and obstacles that we face. And to hear him say that there is a international conversation that's beginning about the need to make those changes if we're really going to change what our secondary education looks like was very encouraging, because that's certainly, whenever we talk about making big changes to like Attleboro High School, the first thing that anybody that wants to throw up a roadblock says is, well, what are you going to do about college entrances? So the fact that they're see that as part of the problem was very encouraging. So that's my feedback on that experience, and that concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sawyer. Next, we have budget process outline. Mr. Furtado? Welcome.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Okay. As the superintendent mentioned, we've had an initial meeting with the city. We have Governor Baker's budget as well as the cherry sheet numbers. So we are able to put together preliminary budget projections. We would expect to provide the committee with a full overview on the 11th, including all three budgets that you're looking for, which would allow us to have our public hearing on the 25th and provide the committee the month of May to deliberate and consider. Typically, the city goes to the council in June. That's not an absolute, so we would expect sort of a final position from the city at that time. As this body knows, the state wrestles through June and sometimes into July. Given the discussions taking place at the state level regarding school funding, that's a strong possibility this year. I think the governor's budget is the floor from what we should expect. I think it will get better. It's just a question of how much. There are currently 3 budget proposals working its way through the legislature. Member Quinn could speak to it as he was at a hearing last week. So I think the committee should be expecting a sort of a final vote on our budget sometime in late June, in concert with the city's process through the municipal council.
Questions, comments? What does, how do the state numbers look so far compared to the last few numbers? Last few years?
Yep. The state, the foundation budget was actually encouraging. State funding was up significantly. The municipal minimum requirement was up comfortably. However, we were strongly offset by a significant increase in charter school tuition, which the city takes as a credit against net school spending for the schools, and a significant decrease in charter school tuition reimbursement from the state. So between those two things, the gap increased by over almost $750,000, which took a lot of the air out of the sails.
And do we know the cause of the charter school issue on both sides yet, or is that something we're looking at?
Well, the reimbursement declined significantly because Governor Baker changed the funding formula. So that's subject to adjustment, for sure. And that would be, if for some reason they were to reinstate the old formula, that would be about $250,000 benefit to us. And we haven't looked at, I haven't looked at the enrollment in Foxborough at this point yet since that time.
Any questions? Mr. Quinn, do you have a question? Or?
No, it's interesting that so my understanding is that the structure of the charter reimbursement shrunk from a 5-year phase in to a 3-year,
Right.
with more loaded up front in the first 2 years.
Right.
But then again, you only got additional reimbursement for new totals. So if you had 200 kids, if it stayed at 200, you weren't getting any new reimbursement, even if one graduated, one came in.
Right.
What's shifted in terms of our enrollment numbers that we're getting dinged by that?
We would have had a skew toward those last 2 years because we lost the funding in those last 2 years.
Okay.
So that would have had to be a heavier number than a normal distribution.
Usually that's pretty light too. It's only about, I think, what, 25%?
40.
In the last 2 years?
Yeah, it was a 5-year 2020.
Oh, I thought it was. I was mistaken. Before.
Baker's proposal is 60-30-10.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because I think I happen to have the spreadsheet that the increase in Chapter 70 for us without the credits was 2.7 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
on the state side.
On the state side, yeah, and then I think $1 million plus on the city side.
Right.
A lot of that was driven by, I think about 500,000 was driven by new enrollment.
Yep. About 44 kids.
Yeah, and I think what's just interesting too is that we've gone from the swing of being kind of a minimum aid district where if you're on that $20 per student and where a lot of districts are, we'd really be sweating bullets. I'd like to get a better handle on, the increase in enrollment's really clear to me. The other jumps I'd like to get a better handle on so that we can kind of figure out, and I got to know a lot of it's fluid with, what they decide to do with the foundation budget formula.
In our case, it was two things that drove it primarily was ELL and special needs changes to the formula.
Okay. So yeah, just so we can, not have to go these chutes and ladders.
Yeah.
Because it's, as we know, it's scary when it's a shoot.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. Thank you, Mr. Furtado, and you'll give us the overview on the 11th.
Most certainly will.
All right. Great. Thank you. And that concludes the business agenda tonight. Moving on, next we have our minutes from our March 11th, 2019 meeting. The minutes were circulated with your materials. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda tonight, motion to accept a donation in the amount of $82.78 from Chipotle to the Attleboro High School girls tennis team.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $168 from Attleboro Varsity Booster Club to the Attleboro High School boys basketball team.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $38,702 from the Blue Pride Ambassadors Club for the purchasing of 143 Hewlett-Packard Chromebooks and 143 HP Chromebook licenses.
So moved.
Second.
I'll just say again, as we say every year, thank you to the Blue Pride Ambassadors Club for the amazing work that they do. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. That concludes the consent agenda tonight. Next, we have our subcommittee reports, and for that, I'll turn it over to Policy and Personnel. Mrs. Scales?
Thank you. On our meeting, we started off by revisiting several policies in Section A that we had previously been tabled. We have nothing to bring forward at this time, and we will continue to revise and edit as necessary. We did a full review of Section F, which is Facilities Development. The policies were reviewed by the Director of Finance and Controller. Policy FA, Facilities Development Goals, will be changed to align with Mass to reflect current practices and adheres to current laws. A motion to approve FA as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Policy FB, Facilities Planning, is not a current Mass policy, therefore it is being recommended that we remove it from the binder. Motion to remove Policy FB from the policy binder.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. There are no changes to policy FCB, retirement of facilities, and it aligns with Mass. So a motion to note the review date of policy FCB.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we reviewed policy FF, naming of new schools. The administration recommends aligning the current policy with Mass, which would also include changing the name of the policy to reflect that of Mass, which is naming of new facilities. Motion to approve the edits and name change to policy FF.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Policy FFA, renaming of schools, was reviewed, and like policy FF, the administration recommends aligning the current policy with Mass, which would also include changing the name of the policy to reflect that of Mass, which is memorials. We added additional verbiage of examples for clarification. Motion to approve FFA as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Comments?
Yeah, I noticed in the way that we worded the second paragraph, I was thinking that we may want to be a little more clear. We added wording about like what a permanent memorial could be, because the original Mass wording was just permanent memorials shall be limited to perpetual awards and scholarships. Then we tried to explain a little bit about what a permanent memorial was, such as a sculpture or pictures or statues of that nature. And I think by adding those in there, it made the sentence a little off. Permanent memorials such as, but not limited to, sculptures and statues within the school shall be limited to perpetual awards and scholarships. That kind of doesn't really make sense. So I'm going to make a motion to amend the original motion to change that to permanent memorials such as, but not limited to, sculptures and statues, etc. Within the school shall not be permitted. Permanent memorials shall be limited in form to perpetual awards and scholarships.
Okay. Second.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay. All right, very good. Any other questions? Okay, motion to approve?
The amended.
Amended motion? Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Now you need to approve the.
Okay, and motion to approve FA as amended. FFA as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right. Judy, I'll get you that verbiage. Then lastly, in section F, we looked at policy FFB, naming of specific area within facility. The administration noted that this is repetitive with policy FF and recommends removal. Motion to remove policy FFB from the policy binder.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, the administration brought forward a new policy, IJNDD, policy on social media. This has been a long and thorough process in developing the policy. It was originally brought to the subcommittee, and then it was vetted through the union representatives. We would like to acknowledge the hard work put in by the Director of Human Resources. Motion to approve IJNDD as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All right, comments? Questions?
I will say, a lot of hard work went into this. I do appreciate that it was vetted through the, through the staff, and although there were some concerns I had with it during our policy meeting, the fact that it went through the staff and was agreed upon, I'm fine with it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. The administration also brought forward 3 new policies which all cross-reference one another. The first policy is JP, student gifts and solicitations. The recommendation is to align with mask. Motion to approve policy JP as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Policy KHA, solicitation in the schools, is being adopted also to align with mask. Motion to approve policy KHA as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And lastly, policy KHB, advertising in schools. This too is being adopted to align with mask. Motion to approve policy KHB as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And with that, we only have about 5 policies left in section I. Then most of the sections in B, D, and E are left. And that will complete the entire review of the policy book. We can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. Our next meeting will be on April 1st. We'll go over some more policies and some job descriptions at that time. And that's my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Scales. That concludes our subcommittee reports tonight. Next, we have open forum. This is the time when members of the public may address the school committee. Open forum is not a time for committee members to engage in dialogue with members of the public. Guidelines for open forum are available to you. Please know that we are interested in what you have to say, but we cannot respond without background information on your issue. Please come forward and state your name and address if you would like to address the committee at open forum. All right, that will conclude open forum tonight, and with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Don't mind that.
Here, we'll test your memory. Gina and I have been